Money is simply a tool. It's not good or bad. I think bad people with money still bad, like you said. Good people with money are still going to be good. If you give when you don't have any, you'll give when you have some. And you'll give a lot when you have more. And it's just a tool to be able to use. I mean, it's that simple. It's like a screwdriver or a hammer. And whether you like it or not, like, it's very important in this world. It's a huge item and a big tool to use. Yeah. And so I love to educate people on it, because I think a lot of people grow up with the money is evil. Money doesn't grow on trees. Like, all these things that go into our mind and our mindset really affect our relationship with money. And I don't care about money. Like, I really don't. I just look at it as a tool. I'm not like insanely money hungry. It's more about like the impact that we can make and what can we do with it. I'd love to have more of it, because I think that there's a big impact that I can make with it.
Bill, so great to have you here.
Oh, I'm happy to be here. This is exciting. I love talking on these shows. I absolutely love it. It's one of my favorite things to do.
Well, likewise. And you're a very successful entrepreneur, but I would love to start with what you told me just now off air. You said that your wife asked you for a divorce in 2020 and you worked through it. And I think that's so point near and dear to my heart. Is so many of my friends who are single, they look at my wife and I and they think that I have it all because I'm happily married. And what I try and explain is, it's not a box you tick where, oh, I meet this compatible person and we're attracted to each other and that's it. You say it's something you have to always, just like everything, like your health, like your business. If you don't keep maintaining it, it's going to fall apart. So I'd love to hear a little bit about your backstory. Obviously, I'm English, so I'd love to hear about how you met in London, but or in England. But yeah, about how that happened and how you worked through it. Because I think that'll be so illuminative.
All right, so we want to start the show with the divorce question. Okay, perfect. I think that's a great place to start, actually, because a lot of times, like, I feel like people, like you said, we talked a little bit before the show. You got these people that have a great business but don't have a great life, and it looks like they do, or their social media like perfect. You know, it's like the highlight reel, right?
Yes. So
I started my real estate company. Like, I was a pilot for the Navy for 20 years. I retired last year, and I was on the side. I started kind of like buying rentals and flipping houses, and that turned into me starting a business in like 2015. So I started my real estate flipping business in 2015. It grew really fast. I was active duty flying full time. And I think you need the backstory to really understand the weight of what happened. I remember talking to my wife and saying her name's Lucy. I said, Lucy, I'm going to build this real estate business on the side. I'm not going to be around for this year, but at the end of the year, I'm never going to have to work again if I don't want to. And so I set that stage. We made that agreement. She said, okay. And we, as she came in there, I said, I worked from 4:30 in the morning to like 7:30 in the morning. And then I worked in the evenings from like 7 p.m. when we put our son to bed till like 10:30 at night. And I did that every single day for a year. And I went from doing one deal a year to doing 67 houses that first year. And then I did 135 houses the year after that. And I did 187 houses the year after that. And what I didn't do is I didn't renew that contract every year. So, when you start a business in the beginning, we had this agreement. She's going to raise our son, Will, and I was going to fly and do this real estate thing on the side. And then she was probably expecting that it would be like less and less, or we would just do that. Like, that's what I would do every year, is just this amount of work. And I started getting a lot of my fulfillment from the business side, from the houses, the people I was working with, the coaching, all that stuff. And so I never came back to her and said, hey, how do you feel about what I'm doing? Are you still want to do this for a year? Can I renew for another year? And so I just kept growing and growing and growing. I was around, like I was home. I was playing with the kids. We had another baby. It's just, I was there for sure. I wasn't in the business all the time. I wasn't like absent dad, absent husband, all that stuff. But what I didn't realize is just little by little, she was like, hey, my opinion doesn't really matter. I feel like. And so in 2019, I bought a company that I was a coach for, and I was the COO. I bought a company called 7-Figure Flipping, which is my, mastermind and coaching business. I bought it from my mentor, and I came to her and I said, hey, I want to buy this company. I'm not sure if I should do it. What do you think? And she's like, well, do you want to? And I was like, yeah. And she's like, well, do you think you can do it? And I was like, yeah. She said, okay, well, go ahead. And then I bought the company and I spent more time traveling and doing seminars and workshops and all that stuff. And I think it just kind of like grew and grew and grew inside of her. And she's English, as you might know. She doesn't really talk about her feelings that much. And it takes a lot to kind of get anything out of her. And she started, on top of that, we had a son who needed open heart surgery after he was born. So he had 5 open heart surgeries in the first 6 months he was alive. That was in 2016. So she had a lot of depression and anxiety from that. She was really a lot of postpartum depression. And then 6 months later, or 9 months after we had him, we had our 3rd baby, which was a huge surprise. So James was just out of the hospital when she got pregnant again with our 3rd son. And so more depression, more of this postpartum depression came up. And so I didn't realize it, but we just kind of like 1 degree apart for a long period of time, and she finally just got to a place of like, I want a divorce. And I was like, what? Like I kind of knew that we weren't in a good spot, but I didn't expect that. And what had to happen is we just had to get to like the lowest of the low point. Like we had to strip off all the identity, all the armor, everything, and get back to the essence of who we are. And that's really painful to do. Your identity protects you from pain. And so it just wraps around who we are, all the things, our past, the wounds, the unhealed source of continuing pain that have happened that we push down, like to open all that up, open the box. And I had to go to a really bad place, like get to basically burning the whole thing down to get to the lowest of low, to actually look at each other and say, okay, we do want to be together. And that's where we got to. We got to that spot in end of 2020. And just worked through it. Went to a wellness center together, started working on this. I got really intentional about like my phone was a big trigger for her of like, always being on it, taking calls, all that stuff. And, just realizing that that's, not what I need. I need to be there for her. I need to communicate. We need to talk about that stuff. So all that to say, we worked through it. We're still married. No more kids. We just have the 3 boys. Our son has had 1 more open heart surgery since then. And I think it's really important. You mentioned kind of like balance and those kind of things. I think for anything, if we want to do anything, we're never going to be a 10 out of 10 in every area. We need to take, if we're at a 10 in one area, we're probably at a 4 or 5 in another. So we need to take a couple, take a little bit from one to kind of fill up the other. So I try to keep everything in my life around a 7 or an 8. If I can do that, I'm going to be really, really successful. But if you're spending all your time in your business, you're not going to have any time for your health or for your family or for your spiritual life or any of that stuff, or just fun. And athletics and sports. You mentioned jiu-jitsu. I love to play soccer. I played soccer last night with a bunch of like kids that were way younger than me. And I pretty much can barely stand up out of this chair right now. But, just doing some of that stuff for us. So I know it's a long answer to the story, but I think a lot of people don't share like their downs. They just share their ups, and nobody wears it on their sleeve. Nobody's like, hey, my son has had 5 open heart surgeries. He's got a chromosome anomaly, special needs. He needs an adult with him pretty much all the time.
No, I used to always say when I'd get in fights with ex-girlfriends about nothing. And I'd always say, man, like there's times when you're going to be on, your emotions are actually frazzled and you're going to be on no sleep. And I always give that example of, if you have a child in hospital or something. And so you went through that. Now, as a parent of a 3-year-old, I can only imagine. So I'm sorry, that must have been it's so painful when it's one thing when it's happening to you, but when it's happening to a little innocent child, like when you see, I'm sure like going through, seeing them suffering and confused and not understanding, that must have been so difficult. So I'm really sorry to hear that, but I'm glad he's doing okay.
Oh, my son's name is James, and I feel like God put James in my life for a reason, like very much so. I was going really fast. I didn't have perspective. He slowed me down. I left the military at that time to be in the hospital with him, went in the reserves, just all these things that it allowed me to do was just incredible. Like he was put in my life for me, not to me. So I totally am grateful to have him. He's the most loving, caring kid. He's so special. He's awesome. And honestly, if he has to live in my house for the rest of my life, so be it. Like I love that kid. He's hard. It's challenging. It's not easy at all. It's constant test every single day. But he's amazing. So.
And that's beautiful what you said, Bill, is you said it's not easy. but it's the best. It's, you know, it's a blessing in your life. And I think so many people think that if I just do this, then I can have an easy life, I'll be happy. But we didn't evolve to do easy things and be happy. I think anything that you and I are proud of in our life, when we look back, it's normally going to be the harder things that we overcame, not that we tick the boxes and then we sit back and life is easy. And I love what you said. You said something really interesting. You said you and your wife, it was just 1 degree apart, and just over time you grew apart. That's the James Clear analogy of, you know, if you take off from the East Coast and you just change the degree of the plane 1 degree, when you land on the West Coast, it's going to be, you know, the difference between San Francisco and LA or something. It compounded over time, those little separations. And my wife's a therapist, and the other thing you said is for a while you weren't communicating, and then when you were, it's hard. It's definitely hard for driven, like alpha type males to communicate and ask, because our instinct is just like, you know, in our back of our mind, subconsciously, we're doing all this stuff to provide for our family. But if you don't communicate it, it's easy to see how your significant other feels, you know, like they don't matter.
Yep. And I think that's what she felt like, for sure. Like you don't even ask me, you just do whatever you want. And that's the big thing, that the biggest piece of advice I can give to people is not only just communicating, but really think about that as like a covenant that you have with your spouse, obviously. But each year you're renewing that, whether it's quarterly or annually. But don't let too much time go by without saying, hey, are you still cool going in this direction with me? Like, and if I had done that, I feel like it would have helped a lot. Like, I didn't realize how much she wanted to just be a part of it, because she's not active in the business. She had no desire to be in real estate. Like, and I just go big, go fast, and do all these things. And just saying, hey, like, just asking her opinion from time to time. What do you think about this? And honestly, she probably doesn't care whether I take it or not. It's just the fact that she's part of it.
Yeah.
Even though she says she doesn't want to be a part of it, she does, you know?
Yeah, that's so interesting. The same personality traits often that make you successful in one aspect of your life doesn't make you successful in another. And that's the constant challenge. And I love what you said about, if you're going at a 10 in something, by definition, the other stuff is going to be kind of falling by the wayside a little bit. And I look back at when I was fighting professionally, and, you know, when I had a fight in 6 weeks, that was all that matters, like nothing else. And I had a few relationships where I was honest with them, and I said, you know, this is my priority in life. And of course they said, oh, that sounds okay. And then when they're in it, they're not very happy about it. But it's true. And then as you get older, you realize that I love what you said, is that, you know, I'm okay with being at a 7 or an 8, because then I can still have time and energy for the other important things in my life that I'm trying to nourish.
Yeah, really important. I remember when I was building my business, I just got like really unhealthy and overweight, and I was like out of breath walking up the stairs to play with the kids, and because I spent all my time building the company. There was no, like, it just was not focused on working out, on being healthy, on thinking about that. And same thing, I see a lot of times with the relationships, same thing. So, and I definitely didn't have any fun. All my friends, we talked about business all the time. I didn't take any time for me. And the other thing is, I gave all of my time to the kids. Then whatever's left over was for the spouse. And if there was anything left over, I would give myself something, but there was never anything left over. And so it's really backwards. At the wellness center, the woman that we were working with, she was like, you came first, then the spouse, then the kids. That should be the order at which you give energy to. If you are not showing up your best, they're not going to get anything out of it. And then if you and your relationship, you and your wife or you and your husband, if that relationship is not strong, the kids are going to feel it and see it. And so, like, the best thing that you can do is take care of yourself. It's the whole oxygen mask analogy, right? Put your oxygen mask on first. Everybody says it and understands it, but nobody actually does it. And so when we left there, what I realized is there's things that I've done in my life. I made this list of like 100 things that I love to do that like fill me up with energy. So like, I love to go offshore fishing, go snowboarding, water skiing, scuba diving. I love to just kind of like travel, like all these things that I love to do. And when I looked at them, I was not doing a single thing on that list. Like, there wasn't a single thing that I was doing. It was just all business, all money, all just being there for the kids and going to their stuff. But I wasn't playing soccer. I wasn't going fishing. And so in about 6 weeks, I go fishing for 10 days. This is my 3rd year in a row doing it with my friends for 10 days. And I know that my wife is going to be like, oh, do you really have to go? Like, I gotta be with the kids for myself for like 10 days. And I'm like, yeah, I gotta go. And I'm not going to feel guilty about it at all. And I will a little bit, but I'm going to force myself not to. And I'm going to be offshore 40 miles off the coast where my cell phone does not work for 10 days, just fishing and doing what I love. And so, and that's about me coming, and I'll come back re-energized and be able to give everything that I can to my spouse, my family, my business, all that stuff. So I think it's really important that we take care of ourselves. And it's the opposite for most givers, like all givers. They're very much not selfish, and we have to be selfish in those areas from time to time. And that's a big miss for most entrepreneurs.
Couldn't agree more. I'm so glad you said that. One of my good friends, years before I had kids, would always tell me that. He's like, if I want to be the best father and the best husband, I have to put myself first to be happy. And I remember us having that conversation when she was pregnant. Like, listen, this isn't going to change things. We're still going to do things that nourish us. And then we're still going to put our relationship first, because then we're going to be the best parents. And so I'm so glad you said that. And it is hard to do. Like you said, you still have that twinge of guilt that you have to overcome because you're a giver, but you know that, in the big picture, it's going to make you a much better husband and father.
The best thing that you can do to raise your kids is to have a healthy relationship, I think. Like, if I can figure out how to do that, like, the kids will see that, right? Like, isn't that better than, I don't know, like, I think about like going out to dinner or taking a night to, and we have a nanny that helps us Monday through Friday. And so not feeling guilty having her put the kids to bed so that we can have a night off from the screaming and the kids' craziness and all that stuff. And some nights we just like go over to our farm instead of going home because we know that the kids are not in bed yet. And she feels guilty all the time when we do that. I'm like, you know what? Like, you need a night off. Like, just take a night off and don't feel bad about it. Don't feel guilty. Just, it's okay if you want a little space from your kids. And I think the moms have a lot harder time with that than we do as dads. Moms are just, they have a lot of guilt that they carry around with that. Whereas, I don't necessarily have a problem taking a night off from putting the kids to bed. I just don't.
I'm so glad you said that, because we have exactly the same situation with a nanny, and my wife works part-time. And she definitely deals a lot more than me with that guilt. But it's like, listen, we've got to do things that nourish ourselves. And kids are hard work. My son's 3 and a bit, and he's a force of nature already, and it's exhausting. And I love being with him, but I couldn't be with him 14 hours a day. It would drive me crazy. So yeah, that's so true. One thing that is implied though when we have these conversations is we're lucky. We can afford to buy help and have people help us. And that's my big thing. Is I just feel it sounds like you've been you're in the whole world with mastermind groups, and you said you had a mentor, and I'm sure the last few years you're mentoring other people now. And it's this idea of just, I love, and that's not what this podcast is about. It's one aspect, I guess, but just spreading the knowledge of financial literacy. Because if you, there's that lovely saying, like, if you're a miserable guy when you're broke, you're just going to probably be a miserable wealthy person. But if you can use money wisely to buy back your time, to have people do things, to outsource things that you don't enjoy, then you can use that time and energy for things you will enjoy. Money can provide happiness. And I was very successful in my 20s financially. And then I went through kind of a rough patch in my mid 30s, and I'm doing okay now. And there's a huge correlation between my wealth and my happiness. And it wasn't because I was buying fancy cars. I'm not a particularly showy guy, but I love to travel. I love to spend money on experiences. I love to buy back my time. I'm a hard worker, but I want to work on the things that I want to work on. So I feel like if used wisely, money is so important. And we're in a world right now where a lot of people that don't have assets are getting crushed by inflation, while all the wealthy people have had the best few years because everything's been going up, real estate, stocks, all these kind of things. So I just love spreading that message. And I'd love to hear a little bit about, like, maybe your relationship with money when you're younger and how you see money now, and the kind of the message you're trying to spread to people about finance.
Oh, wow. So I love that you went there, because for a long time, for like the last 8 years, I've been involved in kind of real estate coaching program. So I joined a real estate coaching program like 10 years ago. It helped me build my business up. And then I became a coach for them. And then I became the COO. And then I bought the company in 2019, like I talked about. So I've been teaching kind of like adults the relationship with money, and particularly in real estate, like the value of real estate, whether it's single family, multifamily, whatever. And then we started seeing young people come to our conference. In 2017, we had a young girl come to our conference. She's probably like 9 years old, 10 years old, something like that. Pretty young, with her dad. Her dad was divorced. And it was the thing that they did together. His daughter and him would go to his rental houses. He's buying houses, sending letters, and she would stuff envelopes and stuff. And then she started making videos and doing some YouTube for him and stuff as she got a little bit older. But she came to our conference, and And we were like, wow, this is crazy. Like there's a little kid here that there's always been adults. So like 350, 400 adults at the time there. And then the next year, we had a couple more kids come to the conference. Like parents would bring their kids. And then the next year it was even more. And that young girl in 2021, I asked her to speak on stage. She was like 14 at the time with her dad, about what she was doing. Like she talked about, hey, me and my dad do this. And then I was negotiating with, and they were doing deals together where she was being more active. And that motivated like 3 more kids. And then the next year I had a 12-year-old that had flipped his first house into a rental with his dad. We had a 17-year-old girl who had done 3 houses, 2 wholesale deals and a flip. And they spoke on stage the next year. And then the year after that, we had a 13-year-old that had flipped 3 houses. So all this stuff is like this craziness is happening inside of our community. And the parents kept asking for more for their kids. So in January, we actually said, we need to do something for these kids. Like we have, like everybody's got at least 3 kids in our community. Some have way more than that. And we built a program for financial literacy for families. And so when you say, what am I doing about that? What I realize is I've been teaching the adults this stuff, but really the impact that we can make is on the youth. And because what it'll do is it'll motivate the parents to also start learning with their kids. It'll change the conversations in the house. It will have some co-viewing, co-learning stuff, some things that you can watch together with your kids. And because right now, everything that's on TV and YouTube, like either my kids are watching their YouTube or their TV stuff, or I'm watching mine. There's not a lot of stuff that we can watch together as a family. And so that's one of the things that I think is really, that can kind of change the future of what we're doing is financial literacy, not just for, and also not just for the people that can afford it. Because that's the challenge that we had. This program that we built is $5,000 a year or $500 a month. And so for a family. So now I said, okay, this could be trouble because we got, only the people that actually can pay $5,000 a year can afford this. So everybody that buys one, we give one away to someone else who can't afford it. But they have to keep a certain percentage of activity involved inside the program. If they just get it and don't use it, they're out. Like, sorry, you lost your scholarship. So they apply for that, and we're trying to continue to grow this to larger and larger. We're doing a kids event this summer here in Nashville, where in the summer in June, when they're out of school, the families are going to come here, and we're going to do a 2-day conference for kids at the hotel and have them, and all this cool stuff, great speakers, and motivate them. So I think that's one thing that I would say I think will be my stamp on the world in the future when I go. I'm writing a book right now called Teenage Tycoon. I have no idea when it will be done. I hate writing books. It's so hard for me to do, but that's also the name of the program. I feel like there's a future. I think that has the potential to be a New York Times bestseller, whereas my real estate book is a very niche type book. So, and when I was a kid, like I always wanted to turn $1 into $2. Like everything that I did was like, you give me $1, I want to figure out how to put this in something that I can turn into $2. I would buy, my dad was a military guy, so we shopped at the commissary. I bought all this candy in bulk where it says, do not resale, like not for resale on it. And I'd break it up and I'd sell it at my school. In middle school, we'd walk to school and I'd sell it before school. I got so successful on that door. There was like a little breezeway that you could go into that was unlocked before school started. I'd get there really early and open up my shop and did a lot of business there. And I was able to hire my friend to go cover the other door, and he would make a commission of everything that he sold until I got in trouble and they wanted to suspend me from school for selling so much gum and candy and stuff. And apparently I wasn't allowed to do that. And then I got into baseball cards and mowing lawns and shoveling driveways and all that stuff. And then, I started flipping like cars and then I went in the military and kind of just took a paycheck from the man for a long time until I realized that I should start flipping houses and make some money on the side. So that was my everything in my life has been like, I love money. I was so interested in it. But the first slide in our Teenage Tycoon program, so we have a video training, they're very short lessons, 5 to 8 minutes for the kids and families. And the financial platform, the first slide says, what is money? And I teach these kids, like, I said, is it good? Is it bad? And like, what do you think? And it's neither. Like, it's just a tool. Like, money is simply a tool. It's not good or bad. I think bad people with money still bad, like you said. Good people with money are still going to be good. If you give when you don't have any, you'll give when you have some, and you'll give a lot when you have more. And it's just a tool to be able to use. I mean, it's that simple. It's like a screwdriver or a hammer. And whether you like it or not, like, it's very important in this world. It's a huge item and a big tool to use.
Yeah.
And so I love to educate people on it, because I think a lot of people grow up with the money is evil. Money doesn't grow on trees. Like, all these things that go into our mind and our mindset really affect our relationship with money. And I don't care about money. Like, I really don't. I just look at it as a tool. I'm not like insanely money hungry. It's more about like the impact that we can make and what can we do with it. I'd love to have more of it, because I think that there's a big impact that I can make with it. And I think there's a lot of people out there that have a ton of it that are the wrong people that should have it. And I think there's a lot of people out there that are amazing people that I wish had more of it. So I know that was a long answer to your question, but this is something that I am insanely passionate about. I think the relationship with money that we have in America is horrible. Other countries have it better figured out. And there's some countries that have, like, it's just unbelievably poor. We're the richest country in the nation, and we have the biggest problems. We have the most depression, the most suicide. Like, it's horrible what's happening. And it's obviously, it has nothing to do with being rich or being wealthy. It has to do with like our mindset, what's happening inside of our head and our thoughts that control a lot of that. So I love talking about money. If you sit next to me at a party or in an airplane or on a podcast, I could talk about this for hours and hours and hours, all day, every day. I love talking about money, and because I think people need to change their relationship with it.
100%. Bill, are you familiar with Ayn Rand and her work?
Yeah, of course.
So The Fountainhead, that was the book that inspired me. I was 24 to leave my trading company and start my own trading company. And ironically, my old boss, who I was a horrible human and made my life miserable, the only nice thing he did was buy me that book, and it inspired me to leave, which was funny. But
it's ironic.
Exactly. But Atlas Shrugged, I felt like it was just longer, and I didn't enjoy it as much. I felt like she kind of drowned on. But there was a lovely speech with that character Francisco d'Anconia, and he's this wealthy baron, and he was talking about money being, it's the best medium of exchange. It makes life so much easier. And it's like you sell the best of you and what you can produce to an eager buyer. And I just see he has like a 4-page speech about it. And I love that, because you're right. Money by itself is neither good nor evil, but it definitely makes life so much easier. And I mean, can you imagine trying to exchange everything just on, I'll trade you this, sheep for a haircut, or, like money makes life so easy. And I really, really love what you said about people's relationship to money, because you're right. Like, if you grew up in a household where your parents, when you're very young, and your mind is like a sponge and you just listen to everything and it's going deep in your subconscious, and they're saying things like, oh, all rich people are evil. And then you wonder why, as an adult, you just have a really bad relationship with money and you can't seem to ever get any wealth and get out of debt. A lot of it is from this imprinting from parents or from older people when you're young. And it's not true. So I love the fact you spread that message. And you said something very interesting. You said, in order to do great things, you need to have money to do them. And I think I remember when I was so lucky looking back at my life when I grew up. I had an uncle who, he bought me a book, How to Be a Millionaire. I think I was 12. And then I had a father who I always had a good work ethic like you, and always be helping around the house and do our jobs. And I had a paper route and all that stuff. And he would tell me, like, hey, listen, instead of spending the money, if you invest in equities, you're going to make a lot of money over time. You're going to make more money. So, like, sacrifice now for the payoff later. And I remember I was like investing in the British S&P. And I remember, like, I was in college and my brother was traveling and I was like lending him thousands of dollars, as a kid. And it's just, these are such priceless habits to get. Like you said, if you want to change the world, you don't do it by trying to change people like you and I. You change the youth, and then they're going to have that exponential effect as they get older.
Yeah, and selfishly, I built that program for my kids. Like, that's what I want. Yeah. I think about, like, somebody asked me a question on a show just like this. What do you want to leave behind for your kids? And I was like, oh man, like, I wrote a book. I want to write more. I've got a bunch of content and videos and things like that. But I was like, you know what? I want to leave. This is the program I want to leave for my kids. Like, this is what they should be teaching in school, but they're not.
Yeah.
Like, so it's the structure and the foundation. Once I get through, like, all the modules that we're teaching there, like, this is basically a PhD for financial and business and real estate education for children and families that I could just leave behind, and hopefully they can go through it if anything ever happens to me. So that's their dad teaching them everything that they need to know about money and what I know. It's not everything they need to know, but everything that I know, hopefully. So I totally agree with you. Like that, we have to be the producers in that book, Atlas Shrugged, is so interesting. It's the fact that we create, like we're creating all of these things, this economy, and there's, it's such an interesting, like dynamic economy of what I see right now, the whole creator economy and everything that's happening in there. And it's just, people just, they miss it. There's so much opportunity. There's an exchange of value. Like everybody has so much value inside of them. They just figure out how to monetize that. We have a farm, we have a farmer's market, we have our masterminds, we have the kids mastermind now. It's like, I just want to get in front of other people to hopefully, like you said, be that example that they need of somebody who is giving, is not only focused on profitability, but also experience, like the experience that people get, the culture that's there. And I mean, I had a guy come in today, sit with me for 15 minutes in the office, who had a stroke 8 years ago, having a tough time, came to my farmer's market, and he's asking me if I could help him. I said, dude, come to my office. I don't know. We'll figure out a time. Let's talk about it. We talked about how much money they're making, how much they're saving, what their budget looks like. And his mindset is totally messed up. Had a stroke, can't work. And now he feels like he's a drain on the family. And it's all coming from that thought that's in his head that's changing his entire perception about money inside of his family right now. And so, because he was the only producer, his wife was a stay-at-home mom, and now she's out working, and he's working at Publix for like, I don't know, a couple $1,000s a year. Yeah. And so I think it's really important for us, the people that have money, that have a good mindset, that have figured out how to build something, to be able to go out and impact others and set the example and shine the light for them to follow, as opposed to like, following all the people that have money that just, they got money, but they shouldn't be followed, if that makes sense. Like they have money, but they shouldn't teach any of the integrity that comes with it, like the actual like values that they have. So I think it's important.
I'm so glad you said that, and shout out to our mutual friend Nick Lamagna for introducing us. Because I think when I listened to you on his podcast, and you just had that, I could tell straight away you were that kind of guy where you were looking to put yourself in a good position so you can have a maximum benefit to others and help people. And it's, I feel like there's two types of successful people. There's the ones that are just successful doing their own thing, and they're the ones that are successful and they're thinking about giving back to their community. Like you said, taking time for someone like, hey, talk, I want to help, I want to spread the knowledge. And I love that idea of a career arc in life where put yourself first, get yourself some skills, then later on you're going to get financially rewarded for those skills. And then as you become successful, you're going to start giving back to those around you. Because, like there's that lovely book that talked about the top regrets of the dying, and no one ever on their deathbed wishes they have more money. It's always about, I wish I spent more time with people I loved. I wish I'd done nicer things for other people. I wish I'd lived a life true to my own purpose, not what people expected of me. These are all things that, it's so funny. I feel like sometimes I'm turning 45 next week, and I feel like I'm an 85-year-old soul, because I think a lot about these things. It's like, I don't want to be that guy who's 85 with regrets. So what do I have to do today to make sure I'm not that guy as I get older?
Yeah, my life insurance policy will take care of that for my family. So you're right. We should probably just spend it all. But we do spend a lot of time. I spend a lot of time building a legacy, like a financial legacy for my kids and my family. But if I raise them right, they should be able to take care of themselves, right?
But Bill, do you not worry about that? Do you not worry about that?
What's that?
Do you not worry about if you leave them this great legacy? Because that isn't there that famous statistic that most millionaires in America are first generation millionaires because the children of wealthy parents a lot of the time really lack motivation. And that's my biggest fear is I'm working hard so my son's going to have a life that a good youth. He's going to travel. He gets to live in a nice safe area and a nice house, all these things. But the thing that I'm thinking about is there's a few non-negotiables, and one of them is you have to get a jiu-jitsu black belt, which is going to be, if he starts training at 4, it's probably going to take him till he's 18 or 20. It's hard to get. And I feel like he'll get adversity through sports, as opposed to he won't be struggling to pay the bills. But I do worry a little bit about that. And I've heard a lot of successful people say the same thing, that what gave them this drive was that they grew up with very little. And, I just compare my youth where I had, one or two toys to my kid's toy room, and I've got a little envy of his youth and all the things he gets to play with, because I didn't have a youth like that. So I just wonder how that's going to impact. And I would love to hear your thoughts on that, because I know you're building a legacy for them.
Yeah, so that's a great question. So when I hear that, I say, what's the alternative to this? It's to spend all my money, make it harder for them, be broke, and not let them grow up in a house that has some money. Like if you're a wealthy parent, then they're living some wealthy lifestyle, right? It's not like, or I just like hide it. We don't like, okay, I have a plane. I was a pilot for the Navy. I have a plane. I'm on my second plane. The plane that we have right now costs $2.7 million to buy. Okay. And to fly it, it costs maybe like close to $1,000 an hour. So it's not like we go down to Disney, maybe $700 an hour. So we go down to Disney, it takes like an hour and a half. It's only like $2,000 round trip for us to fly to Disney and back. But if we flew commercial for the five of us, it would be probably more, probably be like $3,000, like, I don't know, $400 or $500 in ticket. So, but if we go out to California or, somewhere further like Maryland, we go to the beach in Maryland, it might cost $5,000-6,000. My kids are little. They're 9, 7, and 6. And last year when we flew to Maryland, they were 8, 6, and 5. And they said to me, they're like, Daddy, we don't want to go in your plane. We want to go in the big plane. And I was like, okay, you got to be kidding me. Like, this is the life that my kids live. The first, so I'm wearing a Georgia Tech sweatshirt right now. The first football game that my son went to was a Georgia Tech football game where a friend of mine took us into the locker room, showed us the whole video area, and took us onto the field for the whole team to run out on the field. And we would have been watching the game from the field, but my son was too young to be able to stay on the field during the game. So we had to go up to the presidential suite to watch the game. Like, this is his first football game. My first football game. Like, I mean, come on. I think I was 17, and my dad will finally afford to get a ticket for us to go to the game. So yeah, I do worry about some of that stuff, but I'll tell you, what I try to do is I try to give them the perspective that they need. And the way I'm doing that is and by the way, when my son was 3 years old, I thought that 100% he was going to be a professional soccer player and grow up playing soccer like I did. And get to the point where he could get soccer scholarship to college, loved it, would go to the games with me. We got season tickets to the game. And by the way, our season tickets are front row at the Nashville SC, right where they run out on like the 20-yard line. Come on, like and my kids they don't even understand what it's like to sit up in the upper deck. So I thought that was going to be the case, but I'm at the point now in my life where my kids are going to figure out their path. Like, my job is to instill the values, but my son tried soccer. He didn't like it. Now he's playing flag football. He's bouncing back and forth to whether he likes it or not. He's dropping some passes in the practice in the game where he catches them in the backyard all the time. He's struggling a bit. And all I want to do is help him. And you know what? He's got to figure a lot of this stuff out on his own. He bought him a basketball yesterday. We got a basketball hoop at the farm. So he likes to play. I don't know what he's going to find, but I thought I was going to be the dad that is going to force my kid down a path. And what I realized, my wife gives me great perspective here, but what I realized is they're going to play sports because they need to, and team sports and individual sports. I want them to play sports. I want them to be involved in something, not just watching TV and playing video games. Right. And I want to be outside like we were as kids and not stuck inside the house. But with all of that, I realized that every single one of my kids is going to be a little different. And I want them to be just like me, but they're not. Like, your kid might buck jujitsu and hate it. Well, and you're going to be in a position that you're going to have to decide whether you force him to do it or you let him do something else, even though you don't like it.
I definitely don't want him to be a miniature me. I want him to find his own path. The only reason I say that's kind of a non-negotiable is because I know the benefits it'll give him in terms of confidence and all the lessons he'll get through and the confidence he'll have to physically defend himself, things like that. And I actually moved. So I moved I worked for a trading company with different offices. So I was in London, I was in Amsterdam, I was in New York, I moved to Chicago, then I left. I set up a group in Chicago, and I lived in downtown Chicago for over 20 years. And then we moved about a year and a half ago to Northwest Indiana. I found a beautiful ranch on 8 acres. And it was just what I needed, get out of the city and the crime. And it's close enough where I can still go to Chicago regularly. And the reason that I bought this house is because my neighbor, 100 meters away on the street, owns a jiu-jitsu school, and he has 2 boys who are jiu-jitsu champions. And I asked him, because we were having the same conversation. I said, I don't want him, I had professional MMA fights. I was a boxer when I was young. I don't necessarily want him to go down that path unless he wants to. I worry about head trauma and things like that. I think I got very lucky. But I said, I really want him to at least get excellent in jiu-jitsu because I know the benefits it will give him. And I said, how do you do it with your boys? Because his boys are 8 and 14, and they're both jiu-jitsu champions. And I said, how did you do it? And he said, Lawrence, I just told them that this is what we do. And they see me going all the time teaching, and it's just the most natural thing. It doesn't mean, listen, there's days where they don't want to go, and he doesn't force them, he doesn't pressure them. He kind of instilled it. And so I'm hoping to do the same thing. But I definitely agree with you, Bill, 100%. One of my biggest pet peeves is parents that try and live vicariously through their kids. And you'll see that with the father who's like, morbidly obese and looks like he's never done any sports in his life, just screaming and berating at his 10-year-old boy because he didn't win the jiu-jitsu match. So I'd see stuff like that, and it disgusts me. I live vicariously through myself when I was young, so that I don't have to live vicariously through my kids. So I'm really glad you said that, and I just wanted to clarify.
Well, there's a couple things there also. So I want to get back to the money piece too, because I kind of like a roundabout way of using sports for the money. But the thing, there are times 100% that I believe that we as parents have to get our kids to the thing. So like it's always a fight for me to get him dressed, to put on the shoes, put on the uniform, and get to the game. But once he gets in the game, he loves it and he doesn't want to leave. Yeah. Same thing with Cub Scouts. I was an Eagle Scout. I love going camping and hiking and canoeing and all that stuff and being outside. And so it's a non-negotiable for me for the kids to go to Cub Scouts. And honestly, that's something for me that I probably would not let them get out of until they're older. And whereas sports is a non-negotiable, but they can try different ones for me. Like, hey, if you don't want to be a soccer player, that's fine, but you're going to find your sport. You're going to find your sport. And so Scouts is something where they just don't want to go. I get them in the car. I get them there. And then once they're there, they're like, oh, can we stay just a little bit longer? Like, I want to keep playing. I'm like, no, it's time to go. It's time for bed. It's time for bed. And so I say the same thing with my Teenage Tycoon program. People think that they're going to drop their kids, they're going to get on Zoom and be so excited to talk about money. Look, I'm a great coach and I will pull your kids in and they will listen to me because we'll talk about fun things. We'll have a great time, but you got to get them on the call. I can't get them on the call. You get them on the call, you buy them the book. You make sure that they open the book, and then the book club's gonna do its job. I'm gonna do my job. The guest mentors are gonna do their job. The events are gonna do their job. So that's a big piece of it. I totally agree. There's gonna be times where our kids are gonna fight to go to the thing, and we know that they're gonna have a great time when they're there, and we have to have the intestinal fortitude to get them there. So you're totally right on that. It's not always easy, and I don't once they commit. Like my son right now, if he tells me he doesn't want to do flag football, I have no patience for that. Right. You made a commitment to this season. You said you wanted to do it in the first 2 practices. You loved every second of it. And so let's remember that. And then you're going every single practice, every single game. You're going to be there. And then next year we can talk about something different if you don't like it. But you don't like it right now because it's getting hard. Yeah. And that's not acceptable to me. So that's the piece that I didn't want to miss. And I certainly wasn't saying that. I think jiu-jitsu is going to give great discipline, is going to give great. That's an individual sport that is very intense. That is problem solving. Is conditioning. It's challenging. I mean, it's a lot. There's a lot there that they can learn from and glean from. And I think you're doing a great job getting them in at 4. If I got my kids in at 4 and got them addicted before they had all this other noise in their life of friends and school and video games and YouTube and all this stuff. If you can get them loving it at 4, 5, and 6, you got them forever. Probably. That's a great, I've started playing soccer when I was 4. And I never stopped. I played last night. I never stopped. And I'll turn 45 this year too. So the money piece, I just want to talk about that real quick because I was talking about the opposite is being broke, but really for me, it's about, I talked about the perspective a little bit, but I want them to appreciate and understand what money is, what it takes. And then I've studied a lot of other families and how they've built a legacy where their kids and their families actually have to do something and they can't just like have it all.
Yeah.
So if like my kids don't get whatever they want when they turn 18, like they get nothing. They have, I built a life insurance policy for them where they can borrow against their life insurance policy to use in their life and their business. If they want, so if they want to buy a car, they can borrow from the life insurance policy and pay back to it where they don't have to use a bank. They can do the same thing with the house potentially, but they're not just using it to do whatever they want with.
Right.
And we built a trust that then if I do die, I have a $10 million life insurance policy. My wife has a $5 million life insurance policy. Let's just say, God forbid, that her and I are flying and it doesn't go so well and something happens and our kids are home and we're not when we die. There's $15 million that's going to go into a trust that's going to be managed by a professional manager that then is going to figure out, not just like, they're not trust fund babies, but that trust is then going to buy life insurance policies on every kid every time they're being born to build something that can be run for a long period of time. It's similar to the Rockefellers. If anybody's familiar with the Rockefellers, they still have a ton of wealth long after the entry level early Rockefeller family passed away. And the Vanderbilts are a great example of wealth being squandered. And so setting it up such that like really those kids can't screw it up and also enjoying my life and having fun during my life. So like that's only going to happen if there's excess. And my kids, like my job is to instill values and character in them so they understand that they don't just get things, like they have to earn things. And I think a lot of the people that squander wealth or that second generation that really damages it, they haven't passed on the mindset, the culture, the character, and all of the things that are needed to build that wealth. They just passed on the wealth.
Yeah.
So if I do that, then my kids will never treat like $1 like it's, or $100 like it's $1. Or $10,000 like it's $1. And I think that's the problem that happens in generation. Now, like my whole goal is to just raise them right, and so that they can go pass that on to their families and their kids. And I probably won't get it exactly right. There's no manual for it. So I'm just trying to use good examples from the past and figure out like who to follow and who not to follow from people that have built those things. But ultimately, my job is to raise them until they're about 18 years old to be good, upstanding citizens that add value to the culture and the world and, not tear it down. And so they're still going to have to work to buy their first car. They're still going to have to pay their way through college if they want to go to college. If they want to start a business, they're going to have to take a loan. Like they don't just get things. Except you're right. Our playroom is insane. It's so many toys. And they're also going to volunteer. They're going to go to these places. We do mission trips inside my foundation. We have a nonprofit foundation. They come with me on mission trips and go serve the community. They work at my farmer's market for free right now. And like, I just don't let them act like they're spoiled brats. Yeah. And I think that's a big part of it. So it's hard though. There's no manual. I don't know what to do. But I agree. I think it can be easy for them to come up with money. So every time I hear any of that stuff, like if they say anything like that, like I want to fly on the big plane, not daddy's, I'm like, okay, we ain't gonna have a conversation about this. Like you better not be saying that out in public. Let's talk about what this is. They think like doesn't everybody fly to the beach and land right at the airport, right next to the beach and then get in a rental car and like drive to the beach in 5 minutes? Like, no, everybody else lands at BWI and drives an hour and a half to the beach in traffic. And then they go an hour early. They have to, my kids don't even know what it's like to go through security. It's crazy.
I love what you said about the need to instill values. And even just conversations. Like I look back at my youth. So I had a middle class upbringing, but the one area that I live very well is my dad's a retired pilot, commercial pilot. And he would take his family on trips. And if there was room, they'd put us all in first class. And they'd put us up in nice resorts. And I didn't realize that you had nice hotels and crappy hotels. When I was young, I thought a hotel was nice because I already stayed in nice hotels. And I remember when I paid for my first trip, I went to Thailand after college, and I got a cheap hotel. I didn't have much money, and I got the flights. And I remember I walked in with my ex-girlfriend at the time, and I'm like, "What is this shithole? Like, there's a cockroach on the floor, and it looks terrible. And there's no pool." And it's like, well, that's what you get for the time, $30 a night or whatever it was. So it's just even just, and I remember laughing. I'm like, kind of wish now looking back that my dad had had these conversations. Like, you're sitting at this beautiful resort and say, hey, son, this isn't normal. This is a perk of what I get with my job. And this is a beautiful resort. Most people don't get to enjoy that. Just these little things. And I think it's important. But man, that idea of the idea of instilling values, especially when they're young, before they're corrupted. All my friends with older kids say, Lawrence, like, you think you have kids till 18, but when they're 14, they want to hang out with their friends and their peer group. It's not about you. And up till about 4, they're still too young to understand concepts. So you're lucky if you have a decade to really influence them. And I love the fact that we're 2 entrepreneurs, we're 2 real estate guys, but we spent most of the time talking about family because, that is going to be our greatest legacy is our kids. And just what you said is so true. There's no manual for this. You and I are trying to figure it out as we go. And I can't think, listen, I know every generation had its own fears, but man, raising kids in today's world with the distractions of technology and the fact that you and I are also fighting the addiction of our own phone and our own business. And I love what you said about, the phone was an issue with when you were a little distant from your wife, because I remember when he was young, he was really young. He must have been 4 months. And I was sitting with him and I was like, I got to text this guy back about something. And I remember he looked at me, he looked at the phone, he looked at me, and I'm like, Jesus, he's 4 months old and already he sees this thing that comes between us for our attention. And that's one thing that's so difficult with me is my mind is going, and I live a very rich life, but I'm very busy and rich in terms of abundance. I do a lot of things and I have a lot of passion projects and side things. And a lot of time when I'm with him and I slow down, suddenly I get all these things. I got to text this guy back and I got to get back to this guy and I got to email this over for this deal or whatever it is. And that's my biggest challenge, is just trying to be with him, not just with him physically, but with him mentally and spiritually too. And so that's why I love doing things like leaving my phone behind and going to a park or something, being in nature. But then of course it's like, man, we use our phones for photos now. I want to take a photo or a video or something. So that's definitely my personal biggest struggle, is being really present with my wife and son, where I'm really there and I'm not, hang on a sec, let me just text this guy back.
Well, they still have phones that you can just take pictures with too, or just a camera.
I know.
Also,
honestly, I think I need to get one, Bill. I need to get a decent digital camera and just bring that, honestly.
Well, so last year I gave up my phone for, I think it was probably, I want to say 7 months. So it was a week that turned into months and months and months after that. And it was probably the best time of my life since I started my business. We did a Make-A-Wish trip for my son who had his surgeries. And I've been wanting to figure out how to give up this phone for a while, because there's so many means of communication. We have, Facebook messages, Instagram messages, TikTok, YouTube, email, text, Voxer I use. It's just like, you name it, there's like 20 ways to contact me and people. And as you start scaling relationships, there's just so many people that message you all the time. And so as you scale relationships, you have, maybe 50 communications per day, but you can only handle 20. So let's say you get back to 20 people, then the next day you have 80. So there's 30 from the day before and now 50 from this day. So 80, and you can still only get to 20. So now you have 60 left over and 50 from the next day, and now you're at 110. And it's just impossible to keep up with a lot of this stuff. And also remain somebody who people think cares about them. Yeah. And so imagine, I think my email list is a couple 100,000 people, and I don't know, Instagram's, 20K, and then you've got Facebook, which is another 10 or 15K, and then YouTube, like all the people that we're talking to. And then I just can't, like, you can really serve like a core of 6 people in your life efficiently. And so like the size of a Navy SEAL team is about all you can really manage. And I got 5 people at home. Like I got, 3 kids and a wife too. And so I got to the point where I was like, you know what, I just had to burn this down. And so I remember leaving for that trip, and I had another phone. I had bought a second iPhone. And my assistant here, I was like, take this phone and just answer any messages and communications. And it was just going to be for like the week that we were gone. And I took the other phone, and I was going to get a SIM card for this other phone. So it could be like a 911 phone, like my wife would have it, assistant, anybody that needed to contact me could just contact me. And it was a new iPhone. So it had this eSIM card. Like you couldn't actually, like I had a SIM card that I bought for it that I was going to slide in there with the phone number, and it didn't have a place to put it. So I was like, okay, well, I'll just go on this trip and I won't have a phone. My wife will have a phone. So if anybody needs me, they probably call her because we'll be together. I took like 1,600 photos and videos of this trip, enough to document like probably a 10-hour YouTube video because it was a once in a lifetime event. And when I got home, that whole time I had somebody quit from my company. I had a few other things blow up, but none of it affected my day at Disney World or Universal Studios or at SeaWorld with my son doing his Wish trip. Like I was really there and nobody could get in a hold of me. It was awesome. And then after that, I was like, you know what? Maybe we should just keep doing this. I don't want it. And then I'm at my farm on a Friday, and my COO, he had such an urgent question that he had to drive to my farm like 10 minutes from the office to ask me on Friday the answer, and then he drove back. I'll tell you what, if somebody can't text message you or call you, they make sure it's really important if they have to come see you. Can you imagine that? Like somebody, and this is how it used to be when we were growing up. It's like, oh, you want to ask me a question? You ride your bike down to my house and knock on my door and ask me. And so what it created was a huge like awakening inside of me of the possibilities and how like the speed of communications have really affected us. And so what I would challenge everybody is like, there's a way to do this. I started with a box. I gave my wife a box for Christmas a few years ago. And this was in 2018. I remember exactly when it was, when she was really feeling like I was on my phone all the time. I said, I'm going to put my phone in here at 5 o'clock and I'm not going to take it out till 9. Every day, put it on the counter, and I just put my phone in the box at 5 o'clock, and it was family time. And then I take it out at 9 to just make sure there wasn't any emergencies, and that was it. And I did that for a year until I bought that company, and I said I have to be plugged in all the time, and that was kind of the downward spiral of our relationship. So. There's ways to do it. You can get a light phone. You can get all kinds of different things. But I was at church the other day, and we did a digital detox during Lent at my church. And there was a speaker that came in and said, our kids' generation is the first generation that's going to die with more of other people's memories than the ones that they are creating on their own. And when I heard that, I was like, yeah, something's got to give. Like my son is not getting a phone. Like we are totally addicted to these things. Every answer is in our pocket. We don't think anymore. There's so many problems that these things create. And this is from somebody who is basically at my job is digital marketing and info products and things like that, is to gather people's attention. But what I'll say is it is really dangerous. The amount of time that we spend on those things. And you're right. Our kids my kids would have to say my name 3 times before I even snapped out of it. It was like, daddy, daddy, daddy. And they're like, put down your phone. You're always on your phone. I'm like, okay, this is broken. Like basically they think I have a better relationship with that thing than I do with them. Mm-hmm. And so it really is dangerous. And I would encourage you and everyone else to figure out like how to solve that problem. And there's lots of different ways. Like there's even just small steps, little things that make a big difference. So yeah, it's huge. I totally agree with you.
Well, thank you for sharing that, because that I'm sure people listening will get something out of that. But that was just for me. That was I know it's something that I have to be better at, and I'm really glad you said that, because you're 100% right. There's ways around it. And that one of the last things I want to ask you is saying no. I know you mentioned that when you were talking to Nick. A lot of people, especially givers with their personality, we find it hard to say no. And that's something that I've always really struggled with. I take crappy business that isn't worth my time. And I'm a bit of a people pleaser, and I find it really hard to say no. And that's something I'm really proud of. I fired one of my very obnoxious clients who was making me a fortune, but he was just not a nice human. And I was like, man, like, I can't do this anymore. And I felt so happy. And I'm like, I have to do this more. I have to say no. But if you can just maybe give a little tips and strategies for people that have problems saying no, because every time you say yes to something, you're saying no to family time, or no to your own energy, or no to your workout for your health. And that's what I really want to avoid. So it's something that I'm really working on myself right now, but I know it's something that you're very good at.
Okay. Something I'm very good at. I just looked like past my camera to my assistant, who is for some reason kind of laughing and smiling because you just said I'm very good at saying no. I would argue that I'm not. So I mean, I don't know, midway through this show, I told you that somebody from my farmer's market had some problems with his finances and had a stroke 8 years ago. And he was at my office today for like a 20-minute meeting. Like, definitely not the highest and best use of my time for profit. Okay. But probably something that just gives me perspective to be able to help somebody for no cost, no fee. And a lot of times I'm like, oh man, I got to go into this. But I just hope that something that I said to him, as simple as, dude, you need a budget, man. Go back at every single month for the last 6 months and just line item out everything that you spent. But like, I absolutely should have said no to that meeting on paper. Like any other business owner would have said no. Somebody doing 8 figures in business a year, they're not doing that. But I struggle with this every single day. I want to say yes to everything. I want to help everyone. I want to support everyone. So my best piece of advice is to put somebody in the middle who can protect you from you. Because if it was me, I say yes to everything. I don't even know how to say no, but I agree. If you said it right. If you say, I'm saying yes to this thing, I have to say no to something else. The problem is I can't look another great human being in the eye and say no. Like, I don't know how to do it. I really don't. I really struggle with it. And even when I do, I feel bad about it. I'm like, man, why can't I have more time? Why can't I do this? And it's definitely going to dig us an early grave. Like, it stresses me out. All my gray hair is coming from a lot of that. But I'm not good at it. But what I do know is I know myself and I recognize that I'm not good at it. So I have to put systems in place to protect me from being in front of somebody where they could be asking me to do something where I say yes. And I say, hey, I'm not allowed to say yes to this. You have to contact this person. And then they're scheduling it, structuring it, asking more questions, trying to figure out when it is, what's best for me, and build a system like that. I got to have some sort of gatekeeper. Otherwise, I'm just going to say yes to everything.
I love that. It reminds me of, I heard the great advice from somebody that said, if you're a people pleaser, just put in a policy that every time someone asks you something, just say, let me get back to you on that. Never commit to something on the spot, because then it's just too easy to say, yes, of course. And then if you value your word, you can't get out of it.
Yeah, totally. And for everybody listening to this, I am so bad at this. So like, I definitely have not figured this out. And honestly, I don't think I ever will. Like, I will never be somebody who will look somebody and say, no, I can't do that. Sorry, can't help you. Too busy. Like, I'll stay late. I'll sign out autographs all night. Like, if I was a baseball player, I don't even know how I would do it. I would never, like, I would need someone to drag me out of there, because I would sign autographs for those kids all night. Even like when I'm at conferences and somebody's got my book, I will sign books all night. I will stay there. I will talk. I will sit at the round tables and give and give and give until the next day there's nothing left. And yeah, if I'm in front of you, that's the problem. The good people understand that. The bad people, the difficult, they will take advantage of you.
Yes, exactly.
And so that's the challenge, is I need somebody to protect me from a lot of that stuff. But that also has my values. It's not just like no all the time. They understand how much I care. And they know how to frame that with someone. And then stay there and, like, explain why I had to go or these kind of things, and not be like, oh, and just, sorry, no, like, move on out of the way. Like, I wouldn't be able to have that either. So I don't know. Hopefully that helps somebody listening. But honestly, that's probably why we get where we've gotten, is because we care.
Yeah.
Like, if I was just like freezing people out all the time and not giving, the more you give, the more you get.
Exactly. If you're just about that bottom line and the revenue, I guarantee you'd be a lot less successful than what you are.
Yeah.
Bill, I really appreciate this. I know this is not the conversation direction I thought we'd go, and it was beautiful, man. Talking about, we start by you talking about one of your biggest failures and how you overcame it and mended your marriage, and then just all this stuff about parenting and thinking about legacy in the future. I want to ask you one more thing. It just came to me, just because we're the same age, and you mentioned the life insurance. And I was just curious. I'm reading this fantastic book for the second time, and I'm blanking on the title, which is really embarrassing. But it's by a hospice nurse who's talking about. It's a lot of short stories about people at the end of their life, and there's so much wisdom in there. And I've got so much appreciation for just health. And it's like that beautiful saying: a healthy man wants 1,000 things, but a sick man just one. And you think about. Aging is tough. Aging is really tough. You know, even if you look after yourself, by the time you get in your 70s and 80s, just things like your balance and your energy and your fragility and your memory and all these different things, that's if you're healthy. And then you add on, all these different sicknesses, it can be a little scary. And I was just wondering if you've thought about kind of, do you have any existential fears of death? Because it seems like you're very, you're a thinking man, you're a reader, you've had a very interesting life. Have you had some thoughts about that? And I'd love you to share, if you don't mind, some existential thoughts.
Yeah, I do. Have you ever done this like 7 levels of why exercise? Like,
No.
why do you do something? And then like you go, why? Like, why do you keep building these businesses? And you're like, oh, like it's fun. And it's like, okay, well, why is it fun? And you just keep asking why until you get to like the deepest spot. Like you go deeper and deeper. And by the time you get to like 4 or 5, it's like, it's really hard to go deeper. And so I was doing this, I had this like high level mastermind group called 8-Figure Entrepreneur. We were at a retreat together, and these people that I was coaching. And we had somebody come in and work on, we talked about like brain function and thought, and we were doing cold plunges and all types of different like breathing exercises and things like to really, and just figure out what's going on with us in our life, like why we do what we do. And we did this exercise, and I got to this place where I saw, like, I was like, why? Like, it's just kind of like, why? Like, why do you keep traveling? Why do you do these conferences? Why do you care about impacting people? I just kept going like deeper. And I saw this like stadium of people that were in, like filling the stands, people in the parking lot, like tailgating and just having a good time and smiling and laughing. And it was like, it was my funeral. It was like I just died. But there were so many people there, like, I don't know, 100,000 people. And so my main thing I got to was the why before that was like, why? And I was like, I'm afraid to die. That was the biggest like point that I got, like deepest part, and then that, right? So, and I feel like I was like, I'm afraid to die because I'm not done. Like I can't fill a stadium. Like I didn't do enough. I haven't. And so the biggest fear is that I'm going to die before I've accomplished what I was put here for. And so, yeah, I'm totally afraid of that. Like I am like unbelievably afraid of that. And as I get a little bit older, there's times where I'm like flying my airplane and I'm like, oh man, like what could happen here? Like people are talking on my YouTube channel about this stuff. Like you better hope you don't die in this. And I'm like I wouldn't fly my whole family around in that thing. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like all this stuff starts coming up. And yeah, I'm absolutely afraid of that. But not, I guess, just because it's like unknown. But I mean, I went back to the church like 8 years ago, right before my middle son was born. Came back to the church, very intense experience going back there. And I mean, I feel like I have done, like, I feel like it is going to be fine. It's going to be great, but it's unknown.
Yeah.
And so I lost my grandmother years ago, and I was there. She's ready. She's like, I'm ready to be with God. And I was like, this is incredible. Like, I don't even know how you could be like that right now. I would be like, give me 1 more week. And she's just like, I'm ready to go. I want to go right now. And so, yeah, absolutely. 100%. I'm afraid to die. And I think about it somewhat often now, but not to a point of like fear. Like I'm just going to stop doing anything, because I mean, I love flying my plane and I think I'm perfectly safe, great pilot. But I really want to, accomplish what I was put here to do.
To maximize your potential. They say that
that's it.
They say that the biggest thing that, in order to have the least fear of death, is just living that full life and leaving, nothing but a burnt out candle when all's said and done. And you really exemplify that. And I'm I'm going to message your assistant and get your address. I want to send you a book, which I think you and your wife, I think it'll really tie in a lot of these thoughts. I think you absolutely love it. But it's by a very old, my favorite therapist, Irv Yalom, and he's in his 90s, and he does a lot of therapy with dying people. And then as he's getting older, he's thinking about his own death. And it's just a beautiful, beautiful book. So I want to send that to you. I know you're a big reader. But Bill,
yeah, that would be perfect for me, especially right now with everything that's going on in my head about this.
But listen, you are such a great guy, and I love it when people that are successful financially and in business have so much depth, and I love having these kind of conversations because they're not. I didn't think it would go this way, and I was thinking about all these practical things about entrepreneurship that I wanted to pick your brains at. And honestly, I love these conversations. So I really appreciate your time. I know you have date night. I want to be respectful. If you have any final places you want people to go to find out more about, your courses and your book coming soon and all things like that, your YouTube channel, please let me know.
Yeah, I have a podcast called 7-Figure Flipping. It's a pure real estate investing podcast. So it's a great place. The YouTube channel is just my personal name, Bill Allen. I just encourage people, like, wherever they hang out, to go there. So if you're a YouTube person, that's a great place. We have a 7-Figure Flipping channel in my personal. I fly people around in the airplane and interview them from the cockpit in like 8 GoPros. It's so fun. I got to fly Ed Reed, the safety for the Ravens. It's in the Hall of Fame, Super Bowl champ. It was just so fun. It opens up a ton of great opportunities. But those are all great places. Like, and if you're on Instagram, like, you could find me there, or Facebook, or anywhere. So, yeah, that's pretty much where I hang out online.
I'll make sure to include everything. And Bill, this is such a pleasure, really. And thank you for, you really spoke to me about just being more present and staying away from technology. And if that is priceless. So I'm sure my wife and son would love to thank you for those words, because that really spoke to me.
Absolutely. There's one thing, I always find it's the quality of time that we spend, and not always the quantity of the time. So I was there a lot, and I was priding myself on that, but I was not present.
Yes.
And so I could be there less and more present, and everything would have been better. So that's the biggest thing that I can leave you with specifically, is don't put so much pressure on yourself to be there all the time, but actually not be there. It's way better to be there and 100% there, and then they're fine with being less.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Bill.
Yeah, I had a great time. Thanks for having me.